Secret oral instruction. In that awkward, ambiguous moment is our own wisdom mind. Right there, in the uncertainty of everyday chaos, is our own wisdom mind. Sometimes late at night or on a long walk with a friend, we find ourselves discussing our ideas about how to live and how to act and what is important in life. If we are studying Buddhism and practicing meditation, we might talk of no self and emptiness, of patience and generosity, of loving kindness and compassion. We might have just read something or heard some teaching that turned our usual way of seeing things upside down. We feel that we have just reconnected with the truth we have always known, and that if we could just learn more about it, our life would be delightful and rich. We tell our friends of our longing to shed the huge burden we feel we have always carried. We suddenly are excited and feel it's possible. We tell our friend of our inspiration and how it opens up our life. It is possible, we say, to enjoy the very same things that usually get us down. We can delight in our job, delight in riding the subway, delight in shoveling snow and paying bills and washing dishes. We may have noticed, however, that there is frequently an irritating, if not depressing, discrepancy between our ideas and good intention and how we act when we are confronted with the nitty-gritty details of real-life situations. One afternoon, I was riding a bus in San Francisco, reading a very touching article on human suffering and helping others. The idea of being generous and extending myself to those in need became so poignant that I started to cry. People were looking at me as the tears ran down my cheeks. I felt a great tenderness toward everyone, and a commitment to benefit others aroused in me. As soon as I got home, feeling pretty exhausted after working all day, the phone rang, and it was someone asking if I could please help her out by taking her position as a meditation leader that night. I said, "No, sorry, I need to rest," and hang up. It is not a matter of the right choice or the wrong choice, but simply that we are often presented with a dilemma about bringing together the inspiration of the teaching with what they meant to us on the spot. There is a perplexing tension between our aspiration and the reality of feeling tired, hungry, stressed out, afraid, bored, angry, or whatever we experience in any given moment of our life. Naropa, an 11th century Indian yogi, one day unexpectedly met an old hag on the street. She apparently knew he was one of the greatest Buddhist scholars in India and asked him if he understood the word in the large book he was holding. He said he did, and she laughed and danced with glee. Then she asked him if he understood the meaning of the teaching in that book. Thinking to please her even more, he again said yes. At the point she became enraged, yelling at him that he was a hypocrite and a liar. That encounter changed Naropa's life. He knew that she had his number. Truthfully, he only understood the word and not the profound inner meaning of all teaching he could expound so brilliantly. This is where we also, to one degree or another, find ourselves. We can kid ourselves for a while that we understood meditation and the teaching, but at some point, we have to face it. None of what we have learned seems very relevant when our lover leaves us, when our child has a tantrum in the supermarket, When we are insulted by our colleague, how do we work with our resentment when our boss walks into the room and yells at us? How do we reconcile that frustration and humiliation with our longing to be open and compassionate and not to harm ourselves or others? How do we mix our intention to be alert and gentle in meditation with the reality that we sit down and immediately fall asleep? What about when we sit down and spend the entire time thinking about how we crave someone or something we saw on the way to the meditation hall? Or we sit down and scream the whole morning because our knees hurt and our back hurt and we are bored and fed up. Instead of calm, wakeful, and egoless, we find ourselves getting more edgy, irritable, and solid. This is an interesting place to find oneself. For the practitioner, this is an exceedingly important place. When Naropa, seeking the meaning behind the word, set out to find a teacher, he continually found himself in this position of being squeezed. Intellectually, he knew all about compassion, but when he come upon a flighty, life-infested dog, he looked away. In the same vein, he knew all about non-attachment and non-judging, but when his teacher asked him to do something he disapproved of, he refused. We continually find ourselves in that squeeze. It is a place where we look for alternative to just being there. It is an uncomfortable, embarrassing place, and it's often the place where people like ourselves give up. We like meditation and the teaching when we felt inspired and in touch with ourselves and on the right path. But what about when it began to feel like a burden? Like we made the wrong choice and it is not living up to our expectation at all. The people we are meeting are not all the same, all that same. In fact, they seem pretty confused. The way the place is run is not up to par. Even the teacher is questionable. This place of the squeeze is the very point in our meditation and in our lives where we can really learn something, the point where we are not able to take it or leave it, where we are caught between a rock and a hard place, caught with both the upliftness of our ideas and the rawness of what is happening in front of our eyes. That is indeed a very fruitful place. When we feel squeezed, there is a tendency for mind to become small. We feel miserable, like a victim, like a pathetic, hopeless case. So believe it or not, at that moment of hustle or bewilderment or embarrassment, our mind could become bigger. Instead of taking what occurred as a statement of personal weakness or someone else's power, instead of feeling we are stupid or someone else is unkind, we could drop all the complaints about ourselves and others. We could be there, feeling off guard, not knowing what to do, just hanging out there with the raw and tender energy of the moment. This is the place where we begin to learn the meaning behind the concept and the word. We are so used to running from discomfort and we are so predictable. If we don't like it, we strike out at someone or beat up on ourselves. We want to have security and certainty of some kind when actually we have no ground to stand on at all. Next time there is no ground to stand on, don't consider it an obstacle. Consider it a remarkable stroke of luck. We have no ground to stand on, and at the same time it could soften us and inspire us. Finally, after all this year, we could truly grow up. As Trungpa Rinpoche once said, the best mantra is Om Grow Up Swaha, We are giving change all the time. We can either cling to security or we can let ourselves feel exposed as if we had just been born, as if we had just popped up into the brightness of life and were completely naked. Maybe that sounds too uncomfortable or frightening, but on the other hand, it's our chance to realize that this mundane world is all there is, and we could see it with new eyes, and at long last wake up from our ancient sleep of preconception. The truth, said an ancient Chinese master, is neither like there nor like that. It is like a dog yearning over a bowl of burning oil. He can't leave it because it is too desirable. He can't lick it because it is too hot. So how do we relate to that squeeze? Somehow someone finally needs to encourage us to be inquisitive about this unknown territory and about the unanswerable question of what's going to happen next. The state of knownness is available in that moment of squeeze. In that awkward, ambiguous moment is our own wisdom mind. Right there, in the uncertainty of everyday chaos is our own wisdom mind. We need encouragement to experiment and try these kind of things. It is quite daring, and maybe we feel we aren't up to it. But that's the point, right there in that inadequate, restless feeling in our wisdom mind. We can simply experiment. There is absolutely nothing to lose. We could experiment with not getting tossed around by right and wrong and with learning to relax with groundlessness. When I was a child, I had a picture book called Lives of the Saints. It was filled with stories of men and women who had never had an angry or mean thought and had never hurt a fly. I found the book totally useless as a guide for how we humans were supposed to live a good life. For me, the life of Milarepa is a lot more instructive. Over the year, as I read and reread Milarepa's story, I find myself getting advice for where I'm stuck and can't seem to move forward. To begin with, Milarepa was a murderer, and like most of us, when we blow it, he wanted to atone for his error. And like most of us in the process of seeking liberation, he frequently fell flat on his face. He lied and stole to get what he wanted. He got so depressed he was suicidal, and he experienced nostalgia for the good old days. Like most of us, he had one person in his life who continually tested him and blew his saintly cover. Even when almost everyone regarded him as one of Tibet's most holy men, his vindictive old aunt continued to beat him with sticks and call him names, and he continued to have to figure out what to do with that kind of humiliating squeeze. One can be grateful that a long lineage of teachers has worked with holding their seat with a big squeeze. They were tested and failed and still kept exploring how to just stay there, not seeking solid ground. They trained again and again throughout their lives not to give up on themselves and not to run away when the bottom fell out of their concept and their noble ideas. From their own experience, they have passed along to us the encouragement not to jump over the big squeeze, but to look at it just as it is, not just out of the corner of an eye. They show us how to experience it fully, not as good or bad, but simply as unconditioned and ordinary. This is the kind of instruction that Naropa received from his teacher Tilopa as he set out to find the profound meaning of all that occurs on the path. May we be as brave as he was in trying to find out what it means.